So I think the last thing we'll watch, I'm talking about PragerU, since this earlier this week was Columbus Day, otherwise known as Indigenous Peoples
Oh, I
Day, which
forgot
is
about that.
how our governor Ralph Northam had recognized it, which is I think in itself is kind of a big deal. Uh,
Well, he
this was a
recognized it as Indigenous Peoples Day.
yeah,
Oh,
like he
cool.
opened rather than Columbus Day. This was a video I saw a couple years ago.
Yeah,
I
it
think it
would
was
kind of
20.
yeah, it would
I
kind
think
of be like calling Holocaust Memorial Day Hitler Day, wouldn't it?
yeah, it would, but
I just realized that.
like since we also talked about Steven Crowder, uh, uh, let's see. So like basically,
Even Crowder do a PragerU video?
oh,
Oh,
he's done a few,
oh no.
but like he did a thing on Columbus Day talking about how Columbus was really like yeah, he was bad, but the natives pretty much gave as much as they got, and like like as far as
What?
like the murdering, but it's like
What?
like we can have a nice laugh over this. Uh, but yeah, this was like for
We
like
murdered
Columbus
like
Day.
95% of them with smallpox alone, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, but he says like with because it's smallpox, right? Like because it's smallpox, like that was an accident, so
Doesn't
that doesn't
count?
count. Yeah, or
What a
something like that.
fucking, what a
But yeah,
jackass.
you'll see. Goodbye Columbus Day is the title of the video. What is it? Try the Walther?
Thanksgiving, Independence Day, Memorial Day. Holidays are a great time to riddle Americans with needless oppressive guilt. But the one that
What?
stands head and shoulders above the rest is Columbus Day. The day where progressives indoctrinate your children into believing Columbus to be Satan incarnate, the USA to be his evil spawn, and the Native Americans to be pacifists.
I
And
never
so
learned
now we
this. What
have
is he
Indigenous
talking
Peoples
about?
Day.
Yeah, yeah.
I
In
always learned
kindergarten,
that
in
Columbus was a
kindergarten,
good guy.
in kindergarten, they really watered down. Like we watched an animated video talking about Columbus Day, and they said, yeah, Columbus's actions could be seen as kind of cruel, like kinda.
Yeah, I never learned what he says people are learning.
Yeah, like I always
What
learned,
you reset.
like teacher said that Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492 and he discovered America.
Then he genocided everyone. That wouldn't really
Yeah.
have the same ring to it.
Yeah.
Would have been named 30 years ago Aboriginals Day. Or as it would have been named 10 or 15 years ago, Native Americans Day. Or as it could be named tomorrow in Canada, First Nation Peoples Day. Feeling the urge to self-inflict grievous
that a
bodily
joke?
harm yet? That's
But
Was that supposed to be a joke?
hold on.
progressive indoctrinate your children into believing Columbus to be Satan incarnate, the USA to be his evil spawn, and the Native Americans to be pacifists. And so now we have Indigenous Peoples Day. Or as it would have been named 30 years ago, Aboriginals Day. Or as it would have been
Should
named
still be
10
named
or
that.
15 years ago, Native Americans Day. Or as it
Same
could
with
be named
that.
tomorrow in Canada, First Nation Peoples Day.
Yeah, this is very unimportant. At least like that part is like okay.
But I don't understand. Is that supposed to be a joke? Is that
He's
based on
taking a
data?
jab at it's like, oh, we are not allowed to call them Native Americans anymore. Or like we're not allowed to call them Indians anymore. They're Native Americans. Oh, we're not allowed to call them Native Americans anymore. They're Indigenous peoples. Like
Oh fuck! I didn't know that. I called them Native Americans and Indians and shit like that all the time.
yeah, it's like
I'm a
I always
16th Native
I always
American.
1/16 on my mama's side.
Yep. No, 16th on my dad's side, but yeah.
But yeah, it's very like unimportant shit. It's like okay, semantics about what to call a certain group. Who gives a shit? Yeah.
Feeling the
This
urge
First
to
Nation
self-inflict
Peoples Day seems very lazy.
Yeah.
Like it shouldn't be a joke, but I have no idea what else it could be.
Yeah.
bodily harm yet? That's only natural because the whole charade has become an exercise in hating Western civilization, which is really just an exercise in hating yourself. First,
What?
as far as Columbus goes, the guy deserves some credit, right? Flawed, to be sure, but he was the greatest navigator of his age, the first person to cross the Atlantic from the
Skilled navigator, but he's
What
still
about
fucking
Magellan? What about like there's so many other skilled navigators of that
Yeah.
time who were better than
Yeah.
Columbus.
Yeah.
Columbus didn't even know where he was. I mean, like You literally
Yeah.
didn't know where he was. How could he be a skilled navigator?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like you could say he was a good sailor, but that doesn't take away from the fact that he's fucking committed genocide.
The continent of Europe, and he did so without any maps and only 3 small ships. If
Hitler
you can
was a
name them,
pretty
by the way,
good
comment
military
below, as I'm
commander,
sure your
you know?
professor can't. But
What kind of point is
the
this?
professor probably has taught you the tale of Columbus as a villain, usually
What?
the starting
No, he
off
hasn't.
point to indict the United States.
The only person who actually took time to explain actually how bad Christopher Columbus was my freshman history teacher. It was on Columbus Day. We decided to like take a break from our normal curriculum and say, okay, let's talk about Christopher Columbus, or as I like to call him, the turd.
I would
This-
I would like sometimes hear it in passing, like from a teacher or a student in school, but I had to look up on my own the extent of the fucking genocide. I never,
Yeah,
like he's living in an alternate reality here. This is
Yeah.
not how things are taught.
yeah. And he didn't like fucking discover America either. It's like, well, like, A,
No.
the Native Americans were already there. B,
Yeah,
he
actually, how
wasn't
can you
even,
discover something that's inhabited?
yeah, and B, Leif Erikson did like hundreds of years ago before like he was there. He just
The
didn't he
reason
just
that the
didn't stay
Vikings,
there.
the reason
He
that
just-
the Norse people didn't end up colonizing it was because it wasn't economical, like it
Yeah.
was when Christopher Columbus stumbled upon it.
Well, yeah,
It's entirely
they
money
landed in
related.
different areas of the Americas, like yeah, Christopher Columbus did I think land in like a natural resource rich area. So like
He landed
was-
in Christopher Columbus, I think, landed in the Bahamas, and then
yeah.
Leif Erikson landed, north, of course, like in
Yeah.
Canada, like Greenland, I think.
Or no, not Green. Well, like no, maybe not Greenland, but they have Canada or maybe like northern, USA area.
Something like that, yeah.
As a whole, often relying on a few key myths and some pivotal lies by omission. So, to start with, I'll bet that you probably believe Columbus and other European settlers to simply have committed mass genocide against Native Americans. Sorry, Indigenous. But here's the truth. While there were many examples of brutal warfare between Europeans and Native Americans, neither side actually committed genocide. In fact, there was never an outright policy of Indian extermination. The Native Americans
That
What a
doesn't mean you
narrow
did-
view of what genocide is.
Like there was never a policy on it. Okay.
Genocide doesn't have to be explicitly political. I mean, of
Yeah.
course, this was political, but it was very latent. It was very hidden.
And it was more casually done. There wasn't like
Yeah, it was very unexpressed.
it wasn't like they didn't like make it part of like their mission or whatever.
This is the exact same argument. This is the exact same argument that people make when they say that racism doesn't exist because there aren't any laws anymore that say racism is okay.
Yeah.
This is the same thing.
never an outright
Reality.
policy of Indian extermination. The Native Americans were mostly wiped out through infectious diseases that the settlers had inadvertently brought with them. Of the estimated 250,000 natives in Hispaniola, Columbus's first stop in the Americas in 1492, new infectious diseases wiped out a staggering 95% of their
That's what I
population
thought.
by 1517.
Yeah.
As-
But since they didn't mean to, that doesn't count.
So fucking what? What an idiot! Holy fuck.
Genocide by violence? You can look at any historical account of even the most
He
one-sided
even
battle
says it.
and
Well,
find that
pause
they
it.
were
He gave
still
himself
just that.
away.
Battles!
He just gave
Take Wounded
himself
Knee,
away.
although
Wait,
He said genocide by violence. He just fucking gave himself away, saying that there can be other kinds of genocide, even though he was just trying to conflate genocide and genocide by violence.
yeah.
hundreds of years later, I only bring it up because I know that if I don't, you will. It's become ubiquitous with the idea of Native American genocide. After all, there were 150 to 350 Aboriginals killed or wounded. That's terrible.
Probably
There were
more.
also 25 American soldiers killed and 39 wounded.
That is so
What?
lopsided. That is so lopsided.
Holy fuck! I
That
can't.
is
This is a real video. Hold on, just go back to the numbers again. Go back.
I mean, it's obvious. I mean, like, yeah, the soldiers had more advanced weaponry and more advanced battle tactics because this
Holy
is not
fuck.
something. I mean, like something. This is not something that the native populations really did, right? Not, or at least that they did not have the resources nor the expertise to go up against weapons.
No, have you read
tactics like this.
Jared Diamond's book Guns, Germs, and Steel?
No, I haven't.
Well, those are basically the reasons why certain civilizations prevail over others as guns, germs, and steel. And the American colonization is a great example of that.
Yeah.
Hundreds of years later, I only bring it up because I know that if I don't, you will. It's become ubiquitous with the idea of Native American genocide. After all, there were 150 to 350 Aboriginals killed or wounded. That's terrible. But there were also 25 American soldiers killed and 39
He's
wounded.
so stupid.
No, like that's very lopsided statistics. Like
It's so stupid.
he's trying to say it's equal.
That's not genocide. That's a one-sided beatdown with Old Glory wielding the hammer. And sometimes the massacres
God.
went the other direction. See
That
the
was
Apaches for reference, or the
pushing me back,
Comanches,
how
or a dozen
disgusting
or
that
so other tribes. So the natives often
Old
gave
Glory
as good as they
wielding the
got. Not exactly.
Did you hear that?
No, I was taken aback when he said it was a one-sided beatdown with Old Glory wielding the hammer. That was disgusting.
Yeah, the
Massacres went the other direction. See the Apaches for reference, or the Comanches, or a dozen or so other tribes. So the natives often gave as good as they got. Not
Those were
exactly
all
the
in,
way
like, the same
genocide
area,
usually
too,
tends to
so it's
work.
kind of not
Yeah.
Here's
really-
another thing.
if you want
It's
to
very
talk about
misleading.
the
Those were all
Navajos
kind of
on
in the
that
same
list.
well, not all of them, but the first two he listed, the Apaches and the Comanches, were both in Texas, and the others that I saw in there were all west. So I mean, at that point, the Indians knew what was up because the white people the Europeans, I should say, had already blazed through most of the east, and the Trail of Tears had already happened.
Yeah.
It was very clear what was going on, so they were defending. So yeah, there was open war. Of course, there was.
Yeah. Well, like I brought up the Navajos because like he's citing them as like a tribe that would massacre white people. Well, like I have this book called The Code Talker. It's about
Mhm.
a Navajo teenager who lies to get enlisted in the army. And he fights in World War II, and like the whole point of like his unit was like they were using Navajo language as a code that the Japanese couldn't crack. And the reason why that was really relevant and like in that and it was a whole plot point in the story where like the Navajo soldiers were basically relearning their language because many of these Navajo people were sent to boarding schools when they were younger to basically learn how to be white people. And like in the story, like the narrator and the main character of the story talks about how
Jesus.
he greeted one of his teachers in the Navajo language, like a traditional Navajo greeting, and he said he was like literally dragged to like someplace, and then like he was literally like scrubbing his mouth with soap until like his gums were bleeding, like to
Man.
cleanse his mouth or whatever. And like the story
Oh.
itself is fictional, but like that it is very much it's historical fiction. It's based off of real events.
Right, yeah,
Like
exactly.
the Navajo code talkers were a thing. Like these cultural like assimilation schools, like
Yeah.
or cultural indoctrination, more like were real things.
Yeah, Crowder just doesn't know what he's talking about. He's just
Yeah.
being racist and stupid as usual.
Yeah.
Thing I bet you've been made to believe that many
Continue to
Native
laugh at him.
Americans, sorry, American Indians, sorry, I don't know what, take your pick, lived in harmony.
Why
just
does
being-
why does he keep going to this thing where it's like
Yeah, does he
Oh,
think
we-
it's funny? Does he think it's cute? It just makes him look like a dick.
yeah, just like call them what they want to be called. It's not that hard.
Yeah, who cares?
Environment
dude?
until Columbus arrived and European settlers destroyed the land with their evil technology. Truth, not only did the natives brutally take out people, but they took out entire forests and hunted species to extinction. Squatting Bear and his First Nation buddies weren't hopping into kayaks to block whaling ships,
So they
probably because they were
deserve
too
to
busy
die?
killing
What is
seals
he
to
saying?
waterproof their kayaks. You also probably believe that the Native American, sorry, two-spirited First Nation
Oh,
something or other
God.
culture was a beautiful, pantheistic one of peace. The truth is, not
Why
so
is it
much.
pantheistic?
When Columbus arrived,
doesn't-
the islands were
who doesn't-
inhabited by two main tribes. The Arawaks, who were passive and friendly, and the Caribs, who were vicious cannibals. The Arawaks actually lived in fear of the Caribs for, you guessed it, the reasons being that they hunted them down to enslave them and eat them. Yes,
Oh
eat
my
them.
God.
Ironically, we get the name Caribbean Islands from those famous people eaters. The only way settlers were able to conquer this land was through the help of Native Americans who teamed up with them to settle the score with other tribes who were even bigger jerks than they were.
Oh my God. Oh
Okay,
my
so
god.
there were times in which the Native Americans did work with settlers, but that was not that was like right before the settlers turned back on them and killed them for and enslaved them. So it's like, yeah, maybe that kind of thing happened, but that ignores a whole lot of history of
And
basically being betrayed by the Europeans later.
the only history that he's painted out so far is human beings several hundred years ago didn't have their shit together. He's acting like, but I mean, Europeans were worse. I mean, he's forgetting that. I mean, Europeans were way worse than like accidentally killing fish with canoes and shit.
And it's also like he's totally like trying to just paint like the Native Americans entirely as villains, like
Yeah,
he says, yeah, Columbus was flawed. These people were really bad, so therefore it was all equal. Like, what the fuck?
like the Europeans are the one who enslaved an entire race of people not very long after they killed all the indigenous people on this continent.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, that's the reason he hasn't said anything about the Europeans and he's only been talking about the horrible shit the Native Americans have done because the Europeans have done way worse shit. And it's not a product of their race or their culture or whatever. Well, I guess it is a product of their culture, but it's mostly to do with how they developed.
Yeah.
That's not even to mention the populations in Central and South America famous for ritual human sacrifice. You think Cortez was able to command and conquer with only 500 or so conquistadors?
No way.
Of course not.
No way
It took
he's bringing up
50,000
Cortez.
screaming, angry allied natives who'd had it up to here with being tortured, enslaved, and forced to
Oh
carry
my
gold
God.
for the other native Aztecs.
You can
At some
see the
point, they decided to
steam
roll the
coming out
dice
of
and
his
go with the
ears.
guys.
You
Like,
can see the steam coming out of his ears, dude. He's so fucking angry that people don't like Cortez.
Yeah. It's like,
He's like the worst example to bring up. Why would you bring
Yeah.
up Cortez?
yeah, Cortez was especially bad, like arguably worse than Columbus.
He was like explicitly just after gold. Like
Yeah.
like it wasn't even under like the guise of exploration like some of these other explore. I mean, he was just like, all right, let's fucking kill these people for their
Like,
gold.
well, like I said, like he's bringing up these instances in which, and like they did exist, in which like colonists and natives would work together for like a like any certain goal, but like that was almost immediately followed with the Indians or the Native Americans being betrayed
Yeah.
back.
Yep.
Like, yeah, yeah, like the first Thanksgiving did happen, like the Pilgrims and the natives did have a feast together, but it's not like they were always friends. Like it wasn't always kumbaya.
Well, it was political to kind of bring it back to what we've been talking about this whole time. Yeah, I mean, there was a political motivation for both sides, though they were different. And of course, the Europeans' motivation was to get wealthy and eventually to wipe out the population.
Yeah.
And the indigenous people's political motivation was to fucking stay alive. So, yeah, it's not
Sporting
comparable.
funny beards and metal hats. None of this is to say that the early settlers were perfect, or that they didn't carry out their fair share of pretty scummy stuff, but to use America's mistakes as the brush with which to paint the entirety of its history while completely ignoring the indigenous lifestyle of barbarism and borderline evil is inaccurate at best, dishonest at worst. There were plenty of bloody, horrendous battles between the Europeans and the Indians. When a Neolithic tribe encounters a more technologically advanced people, the guys with the boom boom sticks usually win.
Oh my
Columbus
God.
is not the issue here and never was.
Then that begs the question, why would they attack them at the first place if they were clearly no threat to them? It's like,
Yeah, he's just acting like fucking fighting and conflict and war is just like that's just what happens when two cultures meet.
I mean, well, that typically happens, but that doesn't mean that that's inherently always the case.
I mean, it happens a lot, and we remember when it happens because they stand out. But it doesn't always happen. I mean, there are a lot of. I mean, I don't know. I don't need to bring up examples. I mean, you can probably think of them. Like, I mean, especially in the Mediterranean world, there are a lot of examples of cultures interacting with each other with no problem. Yeah, I mean, this is crazy. This is a crazy fucking view.
I thought it was really interesting when I learned about how like the Persian Empire initially took power. They were essentially able to conquer all these civilizations without really having to go to war that much at all. because like what they would do is that they would approach like like some civilizations say, okay, you get to just do whatever you do now, just pay your loyalties to us, and like just acknowledge us as like a superior, or like just acknowledge like our emperor as like the
Yeah.
superior, as the superior person, and you
Mhm.
just pay taxes to us every now and then, but just go about your day, just like you won't even notice that we're here, right? And
And I mean,
and that large in large part was like how it ended up. But like say,
yeah,
but if you reject our proposal, we will fucking end you. So it's like, okay,
yeah, just like give another example, the Romans right after that did basically the same thing where they Hellenized the Middle East and the Mediterranean and basically said you just basically have to be Greek or close to Greek. Other than that, you can keep your currency, you can keep your religion, you can keep your public buildings,
yeah,
all this other stuff.
just acknowledge us as the superior people
Right.
and as your rulers. But
Yeah, they didn't have to commit genocide to make everyone Greek.
well, I mean, they did it in a few cases, but like
Well,
they fucking ruined Carthage to the point where you still can't grow things in that fucking place
yeah,
to this
that's
day.
true. There's a long history of Rome and Carthage, though. I mean, much longer than the Europeans and the native and the Americas.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's not an excuse. Whatever. Yeah, history is fucking complicated.
Yeah.
This whole Indigenous Peoples Day charade is about teaching your children to despise Western civilization and anybody who dare defend it.
Okay, what is he talking about?
And again,
What
that
does he
could just be
mean
my
Western
Western
civilization?
privilege.
He never defines what he means by does he mean Europe?
Yeah. Or like,
Does it just mean like the spirit of colonizing other places? What is he
well,
talking about?
well, Western civilization has been even though like it can mean things like Western democracy or like Western economics, that kind of thing. Like it can have good connotations, but like the thing is, people are using it as a dog whistle for racism.
Yeah, I mean, because if he's talking about culture, if he's talking about like the Greeks and the Romans, the Middle East was Western long before Europe was. But I can't believe he's talking about Middle Eastern. I can't believe he's talking about the West in that way. It seems like he's talking about white people.
Yeah.
That doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Privilege talking. Happy Columbus Day. I'm Stephen Crowder for Prager University.
He looks like
That
so
infuriated
pissed.
him. He was
Yeah.
so mad about white people not having such a glorious place in the history books anymore.
Well, yeah, you know why Columbus Day exists, right? It was just
No,
a
I have no idea.
it was just a random club of dudes who just wanted a holiday, and they were able to lobby hard enough to get one. And
Is that true?
there was really no precedent for why it was like why it was Columbus Day. He was just like chosen as like the subject. I don't know.
They were just
Maybe
like,
like
hey, let's find a guy who's important in our history. How about the guy who discovered the place?
yeah.
That haphazard? Hmm.
Anyway, I think